Good morning, folks. The purpose of this morning's ride is to discuss that topic nobody likes to discuss, and that is weight loss or weight control, and whether using an e-bike is effective at helping you lose weight. Okay, let's start unpacking the topic of weight control or weight loss and riding an e-bike. Seems like an oxymoron. And you're going to get those comments all the time. You know, it's usually the ha ha ha. You want to lose weight and you ride an e-bike? Well, actually, yes and no. Of course you can lose weight because you can adjust your pedal assist any way you want. You can either have it quite intense that it requires a lot of human exertion to move forward, or you can be that guy that sits on his throttle all day long and gets 30 miles out of his battery and wonders what's going on. So obviously it can be used. Now, the older you get, and just for the record, I'm in my late 50s, the older you get, the more difficult it is to lose weight. Because you lose your muscle mass as you get older. That reduces your metabolism. It makes you less mobile, less able to burn calories, and so forth. So, the big dilemma as we get older is how to remain active and how to burn weight. I've just come back from 6 weeks of vacationing in warmer parts of the world. I live in Canada. And during that 6 weeks, I stuffed my face with local cuisine, cakes, and etc. And what do you think happened? The usual. I put on 22 pounds since the last summer. Now, let me tell you, in my late 50s, to lose 22 pounds, 10 kilograms, it's like climbing Mount Everest. I'm going to start from the bottom, and I've got to be disciplined about getting my activity in. I have found that e-biking works very well for me. May not for you. So, now that we've established that it works for me, all the usual disclaimers apply. You know, if you have unique circumstances, whatever the case may be, then seek the advice you need. This is about people that are old enough to make decisions for themselves. They have a fairly normal trajectory, namely, they need to remain active, they need to lose or control weight, and they want to know if they can do it with an e-bike. And this is my real world experience that I'm sharing with you. So let's start. First things first, you need to keep your heart rate up. It's not going to help you pedal around in pedal assist 5 without putting in an effort. Now, in order to keep your heart rate up, that means your speed is likely going to be elevated. Choose the time of day for when you go cycling. I choose to go earlier in the day. Why? It avoids traffic and it gives me long stretches on the pathway where I can put in a bit of effort and gain a little bit more speed. Don't be that guy that does 40 miles per hour in past 5 and reckons he's putting in an effort. Nonsense. Keep it in past 1 or past 0. The lowest possible pedal assist you can handle, and pedal hard. Collect data on these things. I use a Fitbit. The end of every ride, I want to see how much time did I spend in cardio or fat burning zone or peak. I want to see that I've elevated my heart rate. And if I haven't, next time out, reduce the pedal assist. You'll very quickly get to feel when you're actually in the zone. The bulk of your weight control or weight loss happens in the kitchen. In other words, you need to be on top of your diet. For me, that's always the challenge. I have a fairly strict diet that I try and use. And I say try because it's an ongoing battle. I make rice cakes that I eat when I cycle. So I stop, I have a cup of coffee, and I eat my rice cakes that provide me the energy for the ride. I got the recipe off one of the Cycling World channels. I'll provide a link. They work for me. They may not work for you. Obviously, it's not going to help if you eat high calorie, low nutrition products. So you need to figure that out for yourself, because everybody's dietary needs are different. Figure out what works for you. I also find having my last meal before 7 p.m. in the evening helps, because then I'm not going to bed on a full stomach, and I tend to find that the next morning when I wake up, I don't feel bloated or heavy. Having said that, I find that dinner is not really a meal that works well for me. I need to do the bulk of my eating before my last meal. I find that last meal somehow or other ruins my day. It ruins the effort I've put in for the day. Next point. Weigh yourself every single day. In the morning, same way, every time, and record the weight. Don't weigh yourself occasionally. Do it every single day. When you figured out your diet, you must figure out 2 things. The calories that you're getting from the diet, and your BMR, your Basal Metabolic Rate. That's the rate at which your body burns an amount of calories in a day just surviving. So sitting around doing nothing still burns calories, and you want to know what that figure is. Then the next thing is you need to be creating a calorie deficit. And that deficit needs to take into account the total amount of calories you're consuming in a day. So let's assume you're consuming 3,000 calories and your basal metabolic rate is 2,000. The difference between the two is 1,000 calories. And that's the surplus that you're providing your body to be active on. So in order to lose weight, you obviously need to burn more than 1,000 calories. Now you can't track these things without using some or other device. To assume what you're burning based on your activity is not at all accurate. I do that, and I use a Fitbit, and I find there's no correlation. Why? Because you're using an e-bike. It obviously reduces the amount of effort you put in somewhat. Plus there's a whole lot of other variables like wind and gradient and weight and so on. It's going to affect your final figure. Now, the next point, you need to be consistent about getting out and exercising and doing a certain distance. If you look at your data and your calorie deficit is not enough, you obviously need to increase that. That's going to mean riding harder or riding further. That's up to you. You need to figure it out. And don't be like me. You always have an excuse as to why you never lost weight the day before. You know why. You cheated in the middle of the night. You had a glass of wine. You did something. You rewarded yourself after a big ride. And then the next day, you're disappointed. And you repeat that cycle over and over. Eventually you give up. So, I'm going to periodically post my gains and losses, and I will graph it, record my data, and share it with you, because it's going to force me to get my act together and get back into the shape I was in last summer. When you get older, me included, a lot of health issues are connected to weight gain. So the goal is to remain active, lean your body out, and try and remain healthy and active for as long as you can. And as you can see from the ride so far, there's been minimal to no traffic, and that allows me to keep up my pace. I'm in pass 1 currently and 5th gear. It keeps me in the zone where I'm able to talk and slightly breathless. It's a good zone to be in. How do you manage your bike? Well, if you hit the downhill and you find the pressure on your legs is substantially reduced, you can lower your pedal assist or turn off the power completely. And then when you hit uphill, adjust it accordingly. Those people with the mid-drive and torque sensor, select the option which keeps the pressure on your legs. It's not a light-hearted topic. And I hate this constant struggle with managing weight. Yeah, sure, some of you are genetically blessed to have a high metabolism. The vast majority of us don't. We have to work at it. I shouldn't need to tell you, if you're concerned about your health, then speak to your doctor. But if you're in advanced age, you more or less should know your body by now. As regards the equipment that I use, the scale that gives me my water content, fat percentage, blah, 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 as well as the Fitbit that I use. I will leave links to all of that in the description for you. As regards your e-bike, how to keep the pressure on, I'm not going to tell you that. By now, I'm sure you know how to do that. Obviously, the other piece of advice is don't come out of the starting gate hot. If you used to only doing 15 kilometers or miles in a ride using a fairly high pedal assist, it's not going to do you any good to come out of the starting block and doing 30, 50, 100 kilometers or miles in a single ride with a reduced pedal assist without conditioning your body first. Build up to that level. I'm guilty of that. I came back from vacation. First thing I did was sit on my scale and was shocked at the amount of weight that I put on. And of course, I couldn't wait to get on the bike and start working at burning off the calories. Well, what do you think happened? Because I hadn't cycled over the whole of the winter, I got a niggly knee injury from overuse. So don't be like me, people. But on average, as for the record, I have over 2 seasons worth of data that I've collected. On average, I do over 40 kilometers per day. Every now and then I throw in a 70 or an 80 to give me a big calorie deficit for that day, and then usually I go and ruin it by eating badly. The other reason this topic is important is that more people need to be telling the naysayers, those that are anti-e-bikes, that there are many health benefits to be enjoyed while riding an e-bike. Morning. I see that gentleman every morning. Good to see he made the winter, like all of us. That's it. If I can think of anything else, I'll add it to the video. Otherwise, good luck, and I'll catch you next time.